Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, it's the Season 4 premiere. As always, we're kicking off with Phil Iscove joining us to discuss 1944's Double Indemnity.
Our guest today, returning for a fourth time, kicking off the season every time. We're so excited to have him. He was just telling us how much he likes being on the first episode, and bouncing.
Phil just loves the tip.
He likes being there. He likes being there for us. He likes being there for us, shaking the rust off. We don't always remember how to do this on the first episode. For example, I forgot to ask him to write out what credits he wanted listed when I introduced him.
Oh, that's fine. It's the same as always.
Okay. So, Phil Iscove joining us once again, this time to talk about Double Indemnity. Phil, thank you so much for joining us, for kicking off another season of the show.
Welcome back to the shithouse.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, truthfully, I honestly am honored. I'm honored that I get to be the first out of the gate each season. And I mean, I get first crack. I get to pick my, you guys kind of knew I was going to pick this movie anyway, so it wasn't much of a surprise on this one.
Yeah,
but
we kind of just go through every year's list of movies and go, which one has a brassy broad in the 40s or the 50s?
Well, no,
what are the movies that we've done?
So this is the strange thing. They're actually, you've done double features unintentionally, right? Because you did first season was Sunset Boulevard.
Yes.
Second season was All About Eve.
Yes.
The two major actress movies that were nominated up against each other in 1950. Mm-hmm. Season 3, you're like, I'm going to shake it up. Let's do Chinatown, the 1970s neo-noir. And then you decided, let's do Double Indemnity, which is kind of, the proto-noir.
Yeah, the
right?
proto-noir. Yeah, sure. I guess I did it.
Season 6's movie. You've already locked that in before the show ever started.
Well, now, what was it?
It was E.T.
You tell me. Oh, is that next? No,
I've
locked 5. I've locked 6 in. 5 we haven't.
6 and 5 we haven't talked about yet.
We haven't talked about 5 yet.
Yeah. But you know what's in next season? We got cat people. Some brassy broads in there. Yeah.
Some cat women, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which pairs with our upcoming. Well, at the time people hear this, it will have already happened. But as we record this, our forthcoming episode of your show that was also about cat people.
It was, and lesser for it, one might say.
So to be clear for folks wondering,
needed more cat people.
When we bring Phil on our show, we let him talk about some of the greatest films of all time, and when Phil now we
got him in a room right now. Okay,
yeah.
we got to hash this out. So we get you to come in and talk about classic cinema, and then you get us to come on and talk about the things that are thrown out of a back alley abortion clinic.
Wow. Well, I mean, listen, guys.
I love Sleepwalkers.
You're not wrong.
Because I'm a trash people.
I mean, I can't fight this. This is a fair assessment of our podcasting relationship. But you have come on for great films as well. Unfortunately,
name one.
Rosetta, and you unfortunately got just beat the shit mic during that episode.
Do you consider that a great film, Phil?
I actually do. It's just not a film I'll ever watch again. Okay. You know what I mean? It's not a movie. It's interesting you bring this up, and I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole with this, but it's something I've been grappling with lately, which is the idea of a great film, a film that you acknowledge is a great piece of cinema, but one you would never want to watch again, as opposed to a movie that you love, that is deeply rewatchable and is part of your DNA. How do you know what I mean? How do you reconcile that necessarily? The reason I bring it's just, I'm not trying to dance around what you guys are condemning me for. It's fair. It's a fair assessment, and my apologies, and we will rectify it. But I do sort of, on the Rosetta thing, Mike, it is interesting because I respect that movie. I really do. And I understand why it is sort of this lauded piece of international cinema. But I'll never watch it again. It's not a movie that I'm never jonesing to watch Rosetta.
No.
Just like I'm never jonesing to watch, Zone of Interest again, as much as I respect that movie. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, isn't that kind of just like
Yeah,
the Jonathan Glazer? Like,
I would just say,
thesis
imagine a maniac who maybe like 10 minutes ago just told their friend and podcast producer, if you're going to see it, I'll go see it again. I'm planning on seeing it again.
What was the joke I made
imagine-
about Zone of Interest that made you lose it?
Tom, I don't know, but I don't want to say it on something that can be easily clipped on the internet.
Oh. Well, okay, it wasn't a joke about Zone of Interest. It was about.
By the way, I'm not. I think Zone of Interest is a brilliant movie.
I still got to see it. It finally got to Long Island, so I can see it soon.
That's fair. By the way, for anybody listening, assuming all of this is still in the cut, you actually are hearing this after our Oscar episode. We have not recorded that yet.
Okay.
We do not know each other's opinions. The only thing I know is that Kyle showed me his preliminary Oscar rankings, and I threatened to commit physical violence on him. So
interesting.
But
not fire him.
No, not fire. No. Then we have to find somebody else, Phil. And that's as you know.
No.
That's a pain in
we
the
won't
ass.
fire him.
He can be maimed and still do this job.
Precisely.
We will just take our cues. We will take our cues from a big old corporation in Connecticut and just force him to do the work against his will. And maybe Brock Lesnar will show up.
Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity. You know, Double Indemnity is a movie that I hadn't seen until film school. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming we did some sort of a film noir class or something like that, and I watched it, and it just feels like it's the quintessential film noir. Like if you look up film noir in the dictionary, there's like a picture of the poster for this movie. There's lots of others, but
because there's, in my opinion, there's the two avenues of film noir. There's this kind where it's about like two people or one person or whatever doing something and trying to get out of it, and they get their comeuppance at the end. And then there's like the private detective version of noir, the Chinatown, like we kind of joke, this is the double feature, because these, like, there's the two ways you go about noir, and this is like the prototype really of the one kind of noir. Like,
it's
I would also
interesting.
say, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I think it's interesting you say that, Tom, because I was thinking about that, but in a different way.
I was too.
Last season we did Out of the Past, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about on Out of the Past is Out of the Past is the movie that has every single beat that when people are doing an homage to film noir, they do that. We call Double Indemnity the quintessential film noir, despite the fact that in actuality, very little of this movie is what gets kind of stereotyped as film noir. Like, so in a way, when I think of Double Indemnity, and people define it as, the original film noir, the proto film noir, and I agree with that, but it also occupies to me the same space as when people talk about Shaft as the prototypical blaxploitation film.
It's not the one that actually is copied. It's
exactly
it's Superfly. Yeah.
Exactly. Superfly is out. So like, because when people tell
Black
you
Christmas.
When people tell you Shaft is like blaxploitation, you go in, if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen it in a while, you almost remember it being more of a cliche, and then you watch it and go, this is actually pretty different than what the films that rip it off. I think Double Indemnity, like, number one, we'll get into it more, but like the script is much funnier. It's
just nonstop one-liners. It's crazy.
Plot is, again, like Tom, you mentioned the private detective noir, right? Like that's what we think of. She walked into my office. Whereas this is just a much more like Hitchcockian kind of like guy sort of stumbles into, a strange. It is in a way like this is what inspires a lot of noir films. This is what sets the template, but the stereotypical noir that comes from it doesn't necessarily square with this movie,
Although it's funny.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's funny because I get what you mean from that, but also I do feel like this movie is kind of more ingrained in the DNA of movies that we even still see today. I mean, this is like like half of the output of the Coen brothers. This is like every Sundance or Fantastic Fest or whatever. There's always these indie movies where like clearly they didn't have a lot of money, but you know, two people in the desert or whatever, and it's this crime, blah blah blah. You know, this feels like the private detective thing is the one we all think about, but honestly, when you kind of really like map it out, it does feel like this one, without people thinking about it, is the one that's still living today. Because like we talked about a few weeks ago, the guy who made The Queen's Gambit made a Sam Spade show for AMC with fucking Clive Owen, and no one knows it's on. How does that even happen?
Well, so, okay. I agree with everything you guys are saying, and I also feel as though the kind of fork in the road you guys are speaking of is sort of the B movie and the kind of, you know, little more rough and tumble, grimy kind of noir that I think is sort of akin to what you were saying, Mike, in terms of the Shaft versus Superfly component. But then I also feel like this does have a very kind of Jim Thompson, James Cain kind of vibe to it, right? I mean, obviously has that vibe to it in the sense of you have the femme fatale, you have sort of the crime that goes awry, you have the schmuck that gets screwed over by the girl. So it does have a lot of those kind of bearing walls of the genre. But I also think that, and the X factor to me is, I mean, it is the Wilder of it all, which is that he does have such a specific sense of humor and does have such a specific sort of way of playfully being nihilistic that it you know what I mean? Like it creates this vibe that's really kind of all his own, which is why I think so many people watch this film and were like, well, I can't really do that, but I can do this, you know?
Yeah, this is one of the best screenwriters of all time being like a Jew that dealt with the Holocaust, being like, hey, this is kind of fucked up, but also like really stupid when you think about things in the grand scheme of how bad the world is. Like, these two are just fucking idiots. Look at this woman's dumb fucking hairdo. Like, why are we taking any of these fucking morons seriously? Look at Edward G. Robinson. He's like a little frogman who gets fucking ulcers and has to take a shit every time he has a hunch. Like, Edward G. Robinson's the secret sauce of this movie, in my opinion. I mean, every time that man shows up, I fucking rock out like they're about to play Master of Puppets at a Metallica show.
I do think that, like, it is interesting because I was this time around watching it this time. I mean, first of all, there is the sort of immediate comparison to Sunset Boulevard, just because both Wilder films, both LA movies. I would argue
and you've
that
done both on the show.
I have done both on the show.
Another tie.
I would argue. I mean, I prefer Sunset Boulevard more than this film. I think that Sunset Boulevard is just. I think it has more to say. It's a little bit more sort of like existential. This movie is really just sort of like the world's a terrible place. Let's see if we can get away with something. You know, but I did, watching it this time, I was sort of hit with how nihilistic it is. You know what I mean? These are two deeply selfish people that are kind of willing to do anything in the hopes of, I mean, I don't even know like what they really think the end game.
Well,
is. What is happiness for these two people?
Yeah, well, what's happiness? Okay. Oh my god.
No, what?
Yes, play the clip. I'm just fucking.
Thank you. Okay, even you by this point realize like, right, we have to play the clip. Okay.
Well, no, because I'm basing it off of your reaction. I'm just fucking with you.
Okay.
Let's do that. It's a show. Don't worry.
Before we talk anymore about what we think about Double Indemnity, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. So here is our social media manager, Amanda, telling us what the Library of Congress had to say about Double Indemnity.
A seductive housewife, played by Barbara Stanwyck, lures an insurance salesman, played by Fred McMurray, cast against type, into murder, while the salesman's boss tries to untangle their web of deception. Told in flashback, the film opens with McMurray confessing voluntarily the entire setup into a dictaphone for use by the claims agent, from which the narrative then unfolds. Billy Wilder directed, and Raymond Chandler adapted the James M. Cain novel, and the result is snappy dialogue that always suggests far more than the words spoken. Stanwyck, McMurray, and Robinson give some of their best performances, Wilder's cynical sensibility finds a perfect match in the story's unsentimental perspective, heightened by John Seitz's hard-edged cinematography.
So, Billy Wilder's cynical... See, that the Registry, number one, did more than just a plot synopsis. And number two...
And they didn't shit talk the movie.
They didn't, which is, can I tell you?
Sometimes
Not always the case. Not always the case. Yeah.
What I was going to say was how sort of nihilistic it, like, there's a line in it early on. First of all, Tom, I couldn't agree with you more. Every movie should be fucking someone reading into a dictaphone confessing a crime. It should be the organizing principle of every movie, as far as I'm concerned. It's just
I've just been gut shot, and I'm just walking into an office and just very calmly and casually just reciting the litany of crimes I've committed. Almost like I'm not guilty, but more just like, man, people need to know how I almost got away with this shit.
And that
really smooth move.
Fucking rules, man. I don't know what's going on. They've got like these coils that he's recording on.
The shofar that he's speaking into, yeah. Right? That is so odd. He is talking into it, and then he is going to turn around and start a Seder. Like that's where this is going.
But there's a line early on where he says, "Yes, I killed him. I killed him for money and a woman, and I didn't get the money and I didn't get the woman." Pretty, isn't it? And you're just like, that's the whole fucking movie. Like that. I mean, ultimately, it's just like, I tried to be, I took my swing. It didn't work.
And it's so great too, because this is the first time since The Godfather, maybe the only time since in this whole show, where me and Mike have both read the book.
Yes,
and
that's cool.
it was almost kind of accidental on my part. I was just because I listened to the screen drafts about noir. Their list, so I was just like, let me get into a noir mood. I got the James Cain collection. I'll read, those books, and then it didn't really hit me like, oh yeah, right, we're doing Double Indemnity, so it's kind of good. I read this. Casting Fred McMurray is maybe I'll say the second smartest thing that Billy Wilder does in this, with making this movie, because
I think we both agree what the first smartest he does is.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
You don't want to drop it on him now? You want to wait? Okay.
We'll wait, because I need to make this point. Because having Fred McMurray in the role, you immediately look at this guy and go, oh, you're a moron. Well, you think you're smart. You think, oh, I can outsmart everybody because I'm in the business and I know, what's his Edward G. Robinson's guy? Sykes?
Keys.
I know Keys, so I know like what he looks for, blah, blah. And you just, every time he tries to be charming with her and lay down, I'm going to lay some pipe with this broad and you're just like, oh, you're a fucking idiot. You're just a moron. You're a bloviating dope. This is not going to go well for you. And not only does it not go well for you, you managed to pull it off with the Black Widow.
I absolutely agree with you, because like watching it this time, I mean, there are so many classic scenes in this film just because their banter is fucking incredible. Everyone's talking so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's just unbelievable. But that first scene with Phyllis, where he thinks he's got this all planned out, not even a crime. He just thinks that like, this girl totally this woman wants me.
Oh,
like,
yeah, we're gonna fuck.
We're gonna fuck, right? Like his whole scene where he's just like the back and forth is just so overly confident for such a schmuck, and you're just like, dude, you are walking into a thrasher right now. You have no fucking idea what you're talking.
So he's walking in like he thinks he's Clark Gable and not an insurance salesman.
Well, I mean, like that's so two things that Wilder does really well. One being like, in the book, the character, because we're hearing it from his perspective, right? And it just kind of seems like he, first off, the way that he meets Phyllis is different. There's a whole different thing. But I like that the way that he has McMurray play it in this one carries with it the implication of he has 100% slept with the wives of men he's trying to sell insurance 100%. To before. Oh, yeah. And he rolls in like, another one of those. And then when she's proposing murder, he just quickly goes like, all right. I mean, listen, whatever I got to do to seal the deal on this one. Yes.
He says like, you're not going to fucking get me with your bullshit.
But
then he's like, but now I love you. And yes.
But also,
funny, though.
like, we're all guys here. We've all been in a situation where a girl's like, "Oh, like, you want like 3 more shots?" And it's just like, I don't know if I should drink some more. Yeah, I'll take the shots. I kind of want to.
Oh boy, Phil and I both apprehensive when you went. We're all guys here. I'm like, Tom, are you about to go? We've all committed a murder.
Well, listen, I'm Italian.
There's like a murder on Mike.
Well, listen, I'm Italian. There's a coin flip that it's maybe just like what we do instead of a Sweet 16.
Can I just say that what's amazing, though, would be like what we were talking about, a movie that has the organizing principle, but it's Tom confessing to it on a podcast as opposed to into a dictaphone.
We don't know he has a gunshot wound right now.
We remake Double Indemnity and talk radio.
So Phil, you mentioned Fred McMurray, right?
Yes.
Now, did anybody else? Maybe not. Maybe I'm the only one, because I saw this film for the first time when I was like 12.
Okay.
Because I was going through the AFI list, and I saw this for the
as
time.
One does at 12, sure.
Right, I had a lot of friends, and the point is, I'm going through the AFI list. But the thing that struck me is, now, Phil, when you think of Fred McMurray, right?
Yes.
Is this what you think of, or is there something else?
Is he Father Knows Best, or is he My Two Sons?
He's one of them. He's one of those sitcoms. I don't know the sitcom.
I'm glad you led the question, but didn't have an answer.
Because my point is
not Phil.
Okay,
Mike.
No, my point is to me, I don't think of that. I don't think of the TV show, right? I know he did a TV show, but he was a Disney actor. He was in The Absent-Minded Professor, The Shaggy Dog, The Happiest Millionaire, right? Which I had seen all of those up until that point, right? So watching Double Indemnity for me was like the first time I saw Forbidden Planet and Leslie Nielsen's in it playing it straight. And you're just like, what are you doing here? Right? Like, what?
Yeah.
I watched you make Flubber. I don't know if I'm confused why you're here.
I know what you're saying. And I guess my answer to what you're saying is this is probably my first associate. Like, this is probably the association that I have most with him.
Yeah.
That being said, there's also a part of my brain when I watch this film that also has that kind of good guy TV kind of, sitcom actor thing. Like, he radiates that inside this performance. So it kind of speaks to both of them, if that makes sense.
So like, I must have seen this probably around college, maybe a little after college, something like that. Definitely when I was, drinking. So this is the first thing I ever saw him in. So I don't have any like preconceived notions of him in general. It's just that great thing of like, it's almost stunt casting, but 80 years later, it still works. Of just like, he's just got this energy of a fucking dope. Like, you just can't take this guy seriously, even when he's plotting murder and trying to fuck someone. You're just like, yeah, but like, you're an idiot.
I just to speak to that, because I totally agree, and I also think that it makes the dialogue palatable as well, if that makes sense, right? Like, there are lots of movies that come after this that have that hard-boiled film noir dialogue and take it totally seriously and straight, and they make it work for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that it's part of Wilder in the casting of this guy and him trying to seem like such a badass. And he pulls it off a lot of the time. I don't mean to suggest that he doesn't. But there is also this performative quality to it. Like, the first line he has in this movie, or one of the first lines, is when he gets in the elevator, and the elevator operator says, late night, and he says, late enough, let's ride.
Yeah.
And you're just like, he's making it work, but you're also sort of like, the lady doth protest, right? Like, he's trying a little too hard.
Well, he's a Coen Brothers character. He's
is.
not. The character isn't performing. He genuinely thinks he's this guy.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're not. You're a fucking dope. You're an insurance salesman. And he doesn't even have like a backstory of like, oh, well, he was in World War II and that's why he's able to commit cold-blooded murder. It's just like, no, he probably got a deferment because he has like a flat feet or whatever. And, he's not a tough guy. He doesn't. He's from the middle of the country. It's not like he's some hood from New York who ran away. It's like, no, you're just you're just Fred McMurray.
It's interesting you say that, Tom, because it wasn't supposed to be Fred McMurray.
Oh,
Yeah.
who was it supposed to be?
They did not. They went to a million different people.
Oh, really?
And in fact, it got so desperate, they went to George Raft, who is like a famous. So you know George Raft. People have seen him in Some Like It Hot and so on. So George Raft, the story that gets told in like every special feature is that George Raft was given a script, and he came back to Wilder, turning it down, saying, "Where's the lapel scene?" And Wilder's like, "What the fuck do you mean lapel scene?" "You know, the scene where I turn my lapel around and I show her my badge and I'm a cop the whole time and I'm trying to bust her. Where's the lapel scene?" And he was like, "All right." But I think,
boy.
McMurray, because I do think another script, another director writing script would have a lapel scene. I think part of what makes this movie work is that Wilder and Raymond Chandler, who obviously co-writes the screenplay, even though the two of them despised each other while working on the script. There's a whole, we'll get into that. But I do think it works because clearly Billy Wilder thinks this book, Double Indemnity, is kind of stupid. And I think when you read the book Double Indemnity and you compare it to the film, because the book Double Indemnity is kind of stupid. Because I've done...
Yes, it's a silly plot. Yes.
Not just a silly plot. The book has some just dopey shit.
Okay.
And it's very clear. Let me just note that it's the follow-up to The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Now that's a dopey fucking book.
But the thing is, he writes The Postman Always Rings Twice. Big hit, controversial, all kinds of stuff. And then Kane is like, well, I need to do a follow-up. And once you've read Postman Always Rings Twice, or even seen Postman Always Rings Twice, you can see how it's kind of like, all right, can I do that again? I can switch it up. I did a lot of research on insurance for Postman Always Rings Twice. I can make that a part of this. But you can also feel in the book the points where he's like, I don't really know how to fill in this part. What if there's an extended diatribe about how he tries to sell an actor insurance so that can be the alibi for where he is when he goes out, and I have a whole extended scene about him saying that movie tickets are too expensive. That'll fill a couple pages, right? There's that kind of stuff, But
I would also say, too, it is a pretty sweaty movie, in terms of... And I do think that...
Well, that's James Cain's thing, man. Having read that entire collection, I like them for what they are and whatnot, and there's some pretty decent like writing in terms of just like he can string some words together, but like, fuck, man, like that's why like Postman Always Rings Twice is always something where I'm like, yeah, I like it, but Jesus Christ, there's like 100 coincidences piling atop of each other. This is getting a little too much.
I feel like that's a testament to Wilder, though. Like to come back to what we were saying.
He cuts out a lot of bullshit.
First, I'm sure I haven't read the book, but I'll just say that there's a lot of luck involved in movie making. Obviously, the Fred McMurray thing is lucky, right? Because it does work towards taking the piss out of what's going on, right? Like that's the thing about Sunset Boulevard as well. As sort of noirish as that movie is, it's also winking at the camera a lot and taking the piss out of things. You got a monkey in a fucking coffin. Like it's got a lot of wackadoo shit going on in there. And I think this movie, takes the stink off of the sort of, quite frankly, the sweatiness and the pretzels that this movie kind of twists itself into, that you would just be like, these two fucking idiots couldn't get away with shit. Like there's no way that they would get away with this crime. And it's a testament, I guess, to some degree, that Edward G. Robinson's performance is so such that he's incredible, and you're watching a man chew on this case over the course of like 5 or 6 scenes that like really should have been pieced together way fucking sooner. But like,
it's so funny because like it's almost that they're using Keyes as like sort of a surrogate to be like, for sure, their whole plot was so stupid that even the world's smartest man in Keyes, it took him a little bit to figure it out, because he's just like, I've read 10 books about suicide statistics, and if anybody's and even he's just like, well, what the fuck could have happened? This is so dumb. I can't figure it out.
The train was going 15 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's one of the best little reveals where he's just like, the train was... not only did they throw him off the back of the train, which, is where there's no more train. It's also a train that's going 15 miles an hour. I've fallen down stairs drunk at a faster clip than that, and I was okay. It's that little bit of, and it was going 15 miles an hour. It's so fucking funny.
It's so, but that's...
I love fucking Edward G. Robinson, man. He's the best. I watched Orson Welles' The Stranger 2 weeks ago, where he's just this Nazi hunter, and it's so fucking great. Just this little weird man. He just you should not be able to take this weird little frog man seriously.
He's great.
But he's the best. He's the best.
By the way, let me just say, because we know Edward G. Robinson from gangster movies, as I've dove more into older films, he is so funny. He has a comedy film that he did from around this time called A Slight Case of Murder, where the premise starts out that he is a mafia bootlegger during Prohibition, and he's brewing his own beer, right? And he's making a shit ton of money because he's brewing his own beer, and everybody's coming to get it because it's Prohibition.
Sure.
And the movie starts the day that Prohibition is repealed. And everyone in his speakeasy immediately spits out the beer because no one has had the heart to tell him it's terrible. And then he's so fucking funny in that movie. But I do think, talking about this, again, Wilder is kind of doing with this. You almost feel it that it's not to the same extreme, but like Verhoeven with Starship Troopers, where it's look, there's inherent stupidness to this. That because again. Now I think we need to talk about it, Tom. I think I can't sit on it any longer. Phil, the book ends differently than the movie.
Okay.
And let me just... I'll tee it up with this tease that Mike can fully explain to you. Barbara Stanwyck's character in the book is more like Marvel Comics' version of Thanos than the movies.
Yeah. She has quite the body count. So... The implication in the book, the story. So when
she is horny for death.
Yeah, she's obsessed.
She wants to see and thus become the living embodiment of death.
Yeah, she kills a ton of people.
She says that. They put that in text.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not. This isn't subtext. This is James M. Cain, writer man, putting it onto page, saying essentially horny for death, wants to see death, and wants to become death. That's not the craziest part that we're about to get into.
Phil, only thing, let me just be clear. The only thing that I can do to explain how the book comes off, having read Postman Always Rings Twice, is I want you to imagine, right? I want you to imagine in your own life, right?
Okay.
In your own life, somebody turned around to you, right after Sleepy Hollow got picked up. They went, Phil, this is great. I need you to pick a different Washington Irving character that goes into the future and becomes a detective. You need to do it again.
Okay.
Do it the same thing. And by that point, you would kind of just be like, fuck it. I guess this one has a love interest that wants to kill. She wears red because she loves death. She hides in the snow and she kills it. I don't know. That's
what
how
I do love, though, is that what you're proposing. I love that you say that as though my agent didn't literally ask me to do that.
Specifically, Washington Irving. I appreciate it. There's not a lot to go off of there. You're just fuck it. Joffrey Crayon is in the year 2030.
Maybe Ichabod Crane has a cousin.
Oh God, guys, you don't know Rip Van Winkle, that motherfucker.
Wait, you would do Isn't Rip Van Winkle part of... You combined Rip Van Winkle and... Of course I listened to your Nerdist Writers podcast from whenever.
That. Yeah, no, I mean...
2009.
But I'm just saying, listen.
Anyway,
we have a crazy ending to explain to you.
Please,
blew me... I felt like I was on peyote as I got to the ending in the book.
So, through reasons that are too convoluted for me to even recall...
Okay.
They don't go to jail.
Oh, it's some convoluted bullshit of because of the insurance stuff, and it'll be a big stink for us that you
so
did
basically,
it.
And because the way this works out, so in The Postman Always Rings Twice, right?
Yeah.
There's a key plot point where even though the guy and the girl conspire to kill her husband, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their lawyer is able to get them off because he's able to argue to the insurance company that the guy, who's our main character in Postman Always Rings Twice, he was just a passenger in this car during this car accident. So you would technically have to pay him a bunch of money if this woman is convicted of this crime.
Okay.
But if you call it an accident, nobody needs to be charged. Nobody needs to be charged. Nobody needs to pay any money, right?
And you'll pay less.
Yes, you'll pay less, right?
You'll pay less. So basically,
is,
convincing the insurance companies, save however much money they can. Blah blah blah. All of this bullshit.
So it's a clever twist in Postman Always Rings Twice that he tries to like one up at the end of Double Indemnity, except it makes no sense.
Yeah, Keyes is like, it'll be a big public relations thing, and the cops and all of this, and Sacchetti and the daughter, it'll help them not get in trouble, blah blah blah. So we'll book you
every character.
There's no confession in Double Indemnity.
There is a confession. He's recording it all. Keyes finds it and is like intercepts it.
Yeah.
So basically, instead of him recording it in that moment, he our guy, Fred McMurray's character, wakes up, who has a different name in the book, wakes up in the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's going to try to stop her, Barbara Stanwyck, from killing Lola. Because there's a lot more shit about Sacchetti and Lola in the book.
Yes. Sacchetti has a lot more to do, and also James M. Cain really wants you to know how Italian he is.
Yeah, James M. Cain, he does not like the Mediterraneans, man. Jesus Christ. Really goes in on the Greeks in Postman Always Rings Twice, and the Italians, they get it in both ends in that book.
He has no author has used the word greasy to describe groups of people more than James M. Cain. It is.
Oh my god!
It is.
So he's going to. He's like, I'm going to go to the park to try to stop her from killing Lola, but it turns out to be a trap, and she tries to kill him. But Lola and Sacchetti are both going to the park because of whatever bullshit reason. I forget. It's so complicated. So he wakes up in the hospital, and Keyes has the confession, and basically says this whole thing of like, yeah, we'll buy you a ticket on a boat to Mexico, and you just basically fuck off forever because the boat will land in Mexico in like 12 hours, and we'll put out the APB in 13 hours. So never come back. And he's like, okay, guess I'll do that. Whatever.
So now
he gets on the boat.
Yeah. Okay, so Fred McMurray and the characters, right, of Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck are on the boat. Try and imagine Billy Wilder shooting this if you want. They're on the boat.
He must have laughed so hard reading this book.
And he notices, McMurray's character would notice that she is wearing a red dress, right?
Okay.
Because she is preparing for her date with death.
Right? Oh yeah, she's also on the boat. This is a twist. They don't tell him until they get to the boat, and they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, she's going on the boat too. Good luck with that, asshole. They were just like, good luck in Mexico with this crazy bitch.
Because again, she's a serial killer in the book.
Yeah, they got her too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a nurse who killed a shit ton of patients.
It wasn't just killing Lola's father. It's like she's obsessed with death.
She killed Lola's mother, and she killed a bunch. I think she might have killed some babies. It's a whole thing.
She killed babies and all this. Yeah, she is a A1 nut bar.
This book is stupid. So
it's so stupid. I felt like I was going crazy, just being like, I haven't seen the movie in a bit. I feel like this isn't how the movie ends, but I need to watch the movie again.
Bill, we're still not there. So they're on the boat.
Yeah,
and she's wearing, I think, a red dress because she's waiting for a date with death. He starts describing her in all kinds of like sexy language because again, he's just trying to do Postman Always Rings Twice, but again. Where do you think? You know what, Phil, where do you think it goes from there? As a writer,
so they're on the boat.
They're on the boat headed to Mexico,
right?
And she is talking about like a date with death.
She's just ranting and raving about how wet death gets her.
My gut says that the boat sinks.
Phil? Nuh-uh, buddy. What we find out is that trailing along behind the boat are sharks.
Of course.
Sharks have not been mentioned at any point in this book. This is not a motif. This is not a thing that has been foreshadowed in any capacity.
Okay.
And so they decide they can't just live life on the run.
We'll hate each other. We'll kill each other.
Getting off scot-free and going to Mexico? It's not going to work out. The better solution is we should both throw ourselves off the boat.
In a lover's embrace.
To be
devoured
by sharks. And the book ends with him, like, basically writing to say, like, this is it. This is going to be my final moments. In a few minutes, we're going to throw ourselves to sharks.
It's
end.
Yeah. It's
I mean, listen, guys. Had that happened in the movie, I think this movie might not be as well regarded. I don't think this movie gets onto the National Film Registry if there's a... I guess the question also is...
It's fun watching you process this in real time.
I'm trying
now, just imagine me processing this fucking broad, like almost like Tolkien describing a forest, how much she just loves fucking death. And so this guy, and this is basically like a story. It's basically like a whole story of a woman getting such blue balls about death that she just finally has to kill herself.
Yeah,
it's like, well, you could not die. You're getting away with it. Yeah, but I gotta get some death, man. I gotta get some death. And it's just okay.
I respect this, like this goth kind of obsessed with death, like this Lydia Dietz component to the character. but I'm just
Phil, buddy, you're making it sound like it's going to be easy for a woman to throw you off the back of a boat to some sharks. That's how you're making it sound to us right now.
I mean, truth be told,
it would
Lydia
be for
Dietz
me.
Can do whatever she wants,
right?
To me. An older Lydia Dietz, to be clear, but still, like, I just, I don't know.
Is that going to be the plot of Beetlejuice 2?
Beetlejuice, you mean?
Yeah, Beetlejuice. Her and Beetlejuice grab each other in a lover's embrace.
What if Beetlejuice is just Double Indemnity? Beat for beat. Just
well, hey, listen. Todd Haynes got to remake a James Cain novel for HBO about 10 years back.
I mean, that Mildred Pierce is fucking great. I've actually never seen the original Mildred Pierce. And I know I should. I hear it's incredible.
It's definitely his best book, and in my opinion, the best movie based on his stuff.
So I didn't know that James. I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. You guys mentioned his disdain for Mediterranean people. It seems he also just has disdain for his own people. There's a quote here: "I hated Ireland, hated every piece of it, hated everything it stood for." So he's kind of filled with hate, guys.
Yeah. It's and you can feel it. You really can. Like truly.
It is. It's like reading a school shooter's manifesto. Honestly,
really, like there are no. But Phil, I'm dead serious. There are so many portions of those. Like, so in Postman Always Rings Twice. There'll just be a point where I go, yeah. So and so showed up. He was a real wop. You can always tell a wop because of their greasy, and it just goes on. Like it just goes, and it's so out of place. It doesn't need to be there.
It's interesting because, like,
help.
One of the things that I was really hit with watching the movie this time, and I think it speaks to adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fat on this movie.
No,
right? Like, this movie it's 100 minutes long. It's in, it's out. It knows what it's doing. It doesn't waste any fucking time. It understands the genre that it exists in, so it doesn't need to explain shit away. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to, quote unquote, understand why Walter is in love with Phyllis. He's in love with Phyllis, right? Like, she has got his hooks in him deep. Like, that's just what it is. Because that feels akin to this crime drama that they are a part of, right? Like, I just feel like Wilder knows this thing's on fucking rails, no pun intended, and it's just, it is what it is. And I think that is why it works and why it sounds like the book doesn't. Because the book just is a little up its own ass.
And I think
the book is a little up its own ass.
To your point, though, Phil, like, there's stuff that I think if most people were adapting the book, they would feel like needs to be in there. You know, Tom indicated Sacchetti has more to do. Lola, there is an entire extended thing about McMurray's character, Walter, falling in love with Lola and losing interest in the mother or the stepmother. And there's a whole thing with that, and then there's like the twisted web because it's like, well, Sacchetti's sleeping with Barbara
Stanwyck because it turns out that his dad was a doctor that she fucked over by killing all of these babies at a hospital, and this guy lost his license, and so Sacchetti's like, I'm gonna get my revenge. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, what's not? There's too much stuff.
I guess what I'm saying is, sorry.
Just very quickly, like the difference between film noir and pulp is like fucking razor thin. They even sort of like fold into each other a lot of the time. So it sounds to me like, and again, I haven't read this book. It sounds bad. I'm not writing for this book, but I do think that there's kind of a tonnage issue in terms of like just dialing the pulp up to 11 to sell fucking books. I don't know.
Well, I think it's definitely when I'm saying
it's definitely a pulpy book. Because it's just this. There's just so much. And that's really like, again, talking about Wilder as a great writer. It's really just stripping out all the bullshit, and you get the like little remnants of some of the stuff from the book, like Lola and Sacchetti, but you don't get all this crazy shit about the backstory. You just get, oh, well, here's this, angry Italian kid, and he kind of got tricked, but he still loves Lola, and she still loves him, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And also, like, Stanwyck's last line, when she shoots him, and she goes, I don't think I wasn't in love with you until just yet. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, okay. So you're putting a little bit of the remnants of she kind of is a little horny for death. Okay, we get it. I'm never going to stop saying it. Horny for death. Like it's a great.
That was the original title.
Isn't that Taylor's new album?
What I would say.
I mean,
what I would say.
I know you would.
With Wilder, most people adapting this book would feel obligated to keep that stuff, right?
Sure.
Because I think, reading the book. You're struck by the fact that like his version, that ending, right? Even before the sharks, like Tom's pointing out, like, oh, we're gonna drive out to the park, and we're gonna meet at fucking Griffith Park or wherever, and there's gonna be this whole shootout. Most people adapting that book would be like, and you know what? I want to not just give credit to Wilder here. I think we're missing something, right? Which is Raymond Chandler gets brought in to co-write the script. Sure. Raymond Chandler writes noir books, and you have to imagine there's a part of Raymond Chandler who is, not just adapting a screenplay, but essentially doing touch-ups on this book and being like, well, I would never do this. It is, I think there's that interesting element of the movie Double Indemnity is getting to watch a James M. Cain story by way of Raymond Chandler. And in doing so, you get elements of both of those writers. And I think had it just been Wilder adapting the script himself, who knows where that would have gone? I wonder, look, these guys had a lot of friction. Raymond Chandler wrote letters to the studio complaining about Billy Wilder's behavior, which ranged from he wears a hat all the time to he goes to the bathroom too much. They did not like each other at all. All of this is real. You can find the letters. Because Chandler turned in his first draft of the script, and apparently, apocryphally maybe, but Wilder looked him in the eyes and said, "This is shit, Mr. Chandler." And then they just locked themselves in a room for like several days to churn out this script. And I do think the mix of the noir elements and the humor of Wilder can only come from those two together, because I just have to imagine that Wilder didn't take this shit that seriously, right?
Yeah.
That he was like, this is kind of dumb. And whenever Chandler wanted to make it a little too hard-boiled, Wilder was injecting some more humor. But whenever Wilder wanted to maybe stray a little too far into these two dopes, right? Chandler
Yeah.
is able to bring, like, because it's, Tom mentioned the Coen brothers, right? The difference is, like, with a Coen brothers movie, like, you're laughing at those buffoons the whole time, right? Except for like a Miller's Crossing or whatever, but you're laughing at the buffoons. This I think, walks an incredible tightrope where, when you think about it, they're idiots, right? When you think about their plan, you're like, this isn't going to work. But the tension in so many moments is so good that for a minute, if you don't think about it, you are kind of sitting there going, are they going to get away with this? Maybe they could.
Well,
Maybe this plan's kind of brilliant.
You brought up the Coens, and the film that I thought about a lot as I was watching Double Indemnity this time. And listen, the Coens obviously are hugely inspired by all of this genre and what have you. But The Man Who Wasn't There, I think, is the movie that attempts to, and I would argue is kind of one of their lesser talked about movies. It sort of doesn't really exist.
It's
in
not
a
one of
weird
their
way.
best.
I love The Man Who Wasn't There.
I mean, it's the film that wasn't there.
Heyo.
I mean, listen, they shared best director at Cannes with David Lynch for Mulholland Drive. I think they did a pretty good job with this movie, but I think that the reason this film kind of doesn't exist is it was released by USA Films. It didn't have a particularly full-throated campaign. They didn't really kind of know what to do with this film. And I think part of it is because it exists in this weird slipstream nether space of genre where
it's almost like an anti-noir.
It is, but it also kind of is doing a little. It's obviously more comedic than Double Indemnity is, but it's existing in a similar space, right?
But I think when I say like anti-noir is like it's playing with all of those visual elements and narrative elements, but it's kind of not giving you exactly what you think you want. It's not giving you like the commercial elements from it. There's like Billy Bob's character is kind of like Billy, Billy Bob character is a dope, but he's not a dope like Fred McMurray is. He's kind of just like this quiet guy that you kind of just like, I don't know if I want to watch this guy. He seems a little too...
ultimately, I think, I agree. I don't disagree with you, Tom. It's hard when your protagonist ultimately utters probably less than 10 words of actual dialogue, and most of it is VO, and it's a character who's literally called The Man Who Wasn't There because he kind of doesn't really exist.
But like when you also get like the when he kills Gandolfini, it's it's not some big plot. It's like an accident. Everything is almost like
it's not an accident. He murders him. But
he murders him, but it's not like an elaborate plot. He goes to his office and is just like,
it's been a while since I've seen it. Does he throw him into sharks? Is that how it happened?
He doesn't.
Well, no, that's why it's not remembered.
There is a UFO.
There is a UFO.
But all this is to say that I agree with both of you guys in the sense that obviously the Coens are hugely inspired by Billy Wilder and all sorts of film noir and all that kind of stuff. And so much of their films are a pastiche of all these different genres and whatnot. I bring up The Man Who Wasn't There. First of all, it's their only black and white film. It obviously aesthetically has a lot indebted to these films, but this sort of weird kind of purgatorial vibe that this movie has as well, of these two kind of deeply fucked up lost souls that think they love each other. I mean, I'm not even convinced that, Phyllis basically says as much. Didn't really love you until this moment when I realized I couldn't actually kill you. They're just really fucking sad, broken souls in a way that you don't really see anymore in the same way. Like there have been noir. I mean, Body Heat comes to mind, and like there are obviously other film noirs that are obviously indebted to this film. But I don't know. The Coens seem to be the reason I bring up the Coens is just because of what you're talking about the Wilder Chandler kind of weird Venn diagram, which I think is something that the Coens do try to strike a lot.
Which we kind of seem like, but it's funny. It seems like we've kind of gotten the who's who in this dynamic with the two movies that these guys have done once they split up. It seems like we know which guy's the serious one, and we know which one's the guy who likes quirky lesbians.
We're getting that sense now.
Well, I think
we know what the breakdown is. It's kind of like watching Matrix Resurrections, and we go, okay, we know which Wachowski was which. Okay, we know who would have made good action.
I will say, Phil, to your point though about that and how we don't really see sad people in noir, I think part of that, and we were talking about the way the paths diverge, right? And you mentioned the B movies. Detour is coming up this season. Weirdly, Kenny. So nice. You guys are going to be able to kind of run parallel on that.
There you go.
But Detour is coming up this season. I do think part of the reason that you don't see these sad characters is that so much noir, and especially neo-noir, takes this either is whether they're playing with genre for fun or taking it deeply seriously, the characters need to be cool, right?
Yes.
There is this obsession with making them cool, with taking this shit so fucking seriously. Funny enough, I mentioned him the last time you were on with Chinatown, but Refn, right? Nicholas Winding Refn
sure.
takes this shit so seriously that something like Only God Forgives has moments that just feel downright absurd because of how seriously we have to take it. Wilder, again, reacting to this book, seems to just be going, we can all agree this is kind of dopey. Like, we're all going to have fun with it, right?
Yeah.
But we can all agree this is kind of dopey.
And having read some of Chandler's books, he's definitely like one of the guys of that era where like he's definitely working in the same milieu that James Cain's going, but he's definitely a better writer than James Cain because he knows that these kind of stories, you have to have like your diversions and things to set up so all the dominoes fall, but he knows how he knows not to overdo it. And I think that was kind of the problem that I had with Cain's books, and that I don't think either version of the Postman Always Rings Twice movies really figured out. I think they figured it out in Double Indemnity, and I think they figured it out in Mildred Pierce, which is just we got to strip out because there's too much of this stuff. We can have some of it and have your world building and what domino's going to fall where and but I think Chandler was the guy for this kind of story because, like, this is noir. He knows, with Wilder kind of reining in some of his harder-nosed tendencies of like, all right, we don't need all the Lola Sacchetti stuff. We don't need her to be the greatest serial killer the world has ever known, that she is a cosmic force only matched by fucking Hela. Let's rein it in.
I do think it's worth noting that I do think that subtextually there's something going on between Walter and Lola in the film. I do think that the scene at the Hollywood Bowl, which is amazing, or high above the Hollywood Bowl up in the hills, there is this. I don't necessarily think that Walter is necessarily drawn to her sexually, but I do think that there is this sort of attraction there. There's something pulling them together.
Yeah, and that's one of, like I said, like keeping little elements of stuff from the book where you'd be like, oh, well, I get how you get here by shaving some of it down, but all right, so he's maybe feeling guilty about Lola, or maybe there's a paternal thing because he feels guilty, or blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, maybe not sexual, but it's there. You kind of get the same sense of everything that's going on. So,
or maybe it's, I think the thing that I read into that is just, and the book does try and do this while making it more sexual. Lola is going toward Walter because she feels disappointed by Sacchetti, right? Her partner. Mm-hmm. And he is going to her because he feels disappointed by Phyllis, right? And in reality, up until this, Walter has been able to wander around and sleep with the wives of many an insurance client because he has always benefited from these women who are just like, well, they'll throw themselves at whatever person seems sympathetic because they're disappointed in their partner. And now that's kind of the thing that he's always taken advantage of and thought he was too good for has been the thing that has led to his downfall here, right? Is that he just couldn't, he just couldn't stick to the plan, play it safe, because now he's starting to get freaked out by the woman that he was originally going to, throw it all away for, right? Yep. I do want to touch on, by the way, with that, we should note this book, we've been talking about the book. The book was certainly, I mean, it came out after Postman Always Rings Twice. It was a big to do, but this was not an easy movie to get made, right? Like this was definitely brought them into conflict with the Hayes office, and I feel like that needs to be acknowledged.
Well, that's interesting.
That basically Double Indemnity, because Double Indemnity was published in a magazine when it first came out, which could also explain why there's these weird diatribes, because it was published in installments in Liberty magazine.
That makes total sense, especially if what you guys, which I guess is the case of a lot of, I mean, so many books obviously back in the day, even fucking Dickens and what have you, where you'd have like so much plot going on because each of these things each chapter, each installment needed to have a fucking like cool ass thing happening.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So basically, long story short, the novel, it gets published as a novella after it appears in the magazine, gets sent to like every major studio. And the Hayes office, I have it here, that Joseph Breen of the Hayes office made the studios withdraw all their bids by saying, quote, "The general low tone and sordid flavor of this story makes it, in our judgment, thoroughly unacceptable for screen presentation before mixed audiences in the theater. I am sure you will agree that this is most important to avoid what the code calls the hardening of our audiences, especially those who are young and impressionable, and to the thought and fact of crime." And then 8 years later, they put out a collection of Kane's work, which I think might be the thing Tom has, Three of a Kind, which is Postman, Double Indemnity, and some other book. I don't know if that's the one you have, Tom, but that's
how many
kind of
books did he write?
I have no idea, because it seems like he could just crank those out.
Apparently, he's just like writing them in the fucking bathroom.
Paramount wants Wilder to have Double Indemnity, so they buy it. They resubmit the script to the Hayes office. Hayes office is just still saying absolutely not. So in an amazing blow, Paramount just goes, fuck it, we're going to do it anyway. And then
we're going to do it live.
They get Wilder and Charles Brackett to write a treatment, and the Hayes office approves it, presumably backing down from their original stance. They approve it. They only ask for a few changes, which is they don't want a portrayal of the disposal of the body. They object to the skimpiness of the towel that Barbara Stanwyck was supposed to wear in her original scene. And then there was also a scene that they did shoot that doesn't make it in. Wilder's original ending still wasn't sharks.
Damn it.
But you did actually see McMurray walking to the gas chamber.
Jesus.
Nice.
And they were just like, abso-fucking-lutely not. And
I mean,
I get
he deserves to go to the gas chamber.
No, I know, but it's like you can see how that would parallel, like, because the opening of that film is that great silhouette of the man walking with
him
a
on the
broken
crutches.
leg, right?
Right.
So you can see how that would be bookended, but at the same time, apparently the footage that Wilder shot, like when they test screened it, people were just displeased, were just unfucking happy, and I can't speak to what Wilder shot. Right? I mean, I bring this up on the podcast a lot because I think the movie's incredible. Like, about 10 years later, they make I Want to Live, about a woman being sent to the gas chamber, and they just straight up show you her execution, and it is upsetting. It's also, I use that to tie into one last little fact, which is this is actually based on something kind of real. Kane based his story on Ruth Snyder, who was a woman from Queens, and her lover, who she convinced her lover to kill her husband, right? And colluded. She colluded with her lover and then also an insurance agent to try and collect on his policy with a double indemnity clause. So this is where he gets that idea. Now, some people might be familiar with this because Ruth Snyder, was executed at Sing Sing in the electric chair. And we didn't photograph or film executions. That was considered gauche and a no-no. But a reporter named Tom Howard, you can look this up, snuck in there. Yeah, attached a camera to his ankle, took a picture. The picture looks like a charcoal drawing just from how weirdly it was shot. Deeply upsetting. But I found that interesting if just because the real story that it's based on is best remembered for this shocking footage of an execution. Fast forward like 20 years later, and audiences are telling Billy Wilder that his fake execution in his movie is too upsetting to include. I think that's just an interesting
I think that's
parallel.
a great parallel for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I also think it's interesting too that with the true story, it's the woman convincing the man to do it and all of that. And in this one, I think it's smart that she never outright says anything. It's him inferring that she wants him to die, and it's him coming up with the plan. And I mean,
For sure.
it you know, they weren't thinking about shit like this at the time, even though Billy Wilder was definitely a smarter guy than most when it comes to shit like that. But it kind of circumvents any charges of misogyny by making it, oh, this dame, she tricks this man into committing murder and she's going to have him killed at the end. It's like, no. This guy is a moron. He voluntarily decides to kill a man for no other reason than you're going to get some of her money. I mean, you just wanted sex, bro. Like,
he's a little bit, but he's also a little bit, I mean, not saying apparel, but he's a little bit Leopold and Loeb, right? Like, his motive for murder, he'll never admit it, but his motive for murder is just, I think I could get away with it. I think I know how to get away with this.
Well, he thinks he's a lot smarter than he actually is. He also thinks that he understands the insurance game so well that he can obviously game the system. But I also think that, she doesn't outright say it necessarily, but like, she's obviously nudging him in those directions pretty early on in their conversations. I also think that she is convinced that he is smart and that he can pull this off. Like, it should be said that, like, if she's dumb, and to some degree she is, but I also think that he's convinced her of something and himself, right? It's this self-perpetuating kind of overconfidence that they both have. And yet at the same time, you have these scenes, like all the grocery store scenes, like the supermarket scenes. By the way, that supermarket is incredible.
Yeah.
And that there was ever a time when that's what supermarkets look like is the fucking best.
Is that not how they look out there anymore? We're the East Coasters. We don't know.
Yeah,
I assume it still looks like that.
We have bodegas with cats. That's what we have.
I do love that, like, this is in Sunset Boulevard as well, but like VO talking about like intersections of like places that they go, like had to go to a bowling alley at 3rd and
I love the bowling alley.
I love
that his way of blowing off steam is going to a bowling alley.
It's the best. But what like at 3rd and Weston, which is obviously an actual intersection in Los Angeles, I don't think that there's a bowling alley anymore, but
I think one of the key scenes that really locked in this rewatch, i.e. this morning, is the scene where I've seen it a few times. And I rewatched it a few weeks ago. It's a refresher.
I'm radiating off of him right now.
Oh, whatever. I'll be dead soon anyway. I always love throwing him off with shit like that.
Phil, you should know that is, we're ending season 4 by Tom and I. We've commissioned a ship, and we are going to throw ourselves to the sharks.
Oh, yeah,
that's our finale. Yeah,
you're gonna pull a naiad. You guys are gonna between Cuba and Key West.
No, Phil, that's exactly. We're going to pull. Tom, can I tell you, Phil? Tom has already pulled a naiad because sometimes I go, "Did you document this?" And he goes, "No, I didn't. That's my bad. Just trust me." He already has pulled a naiad.
You've already swam from Cuba to Key West, Tom?
Phil, there's about as much record of it officially. Anyway. We cannot get into Naiad now, but Wikipedia is so funny.
I think a key scene rewatching it today that really highlights him thinking he's smarter than he is, and the movie telling us he's not, is when their boss is like, "Oh, well, I think it was suicide," and he starts listing all of this, and then Keyes starts laying into this fucking boss, just like, "No, you goddamn moron! You grew up in this, and you're a nepo baby. You don't read books about suicide and all these statistics." It's like, did you know that there's never been a recorded case of someone committing suicide by train? And you can see McMurray being like, "Oh, thank God." Just like you see him as Keyes is listing all of this shit off. He's just like, "Oh fuck, I didn't even think of that. That's so lucky that this all of these statistics are going in my favor."
But I think the scene with the boss, Norton, is fantastic. And one of the best lines he has in that scene is when he says, like, people think just because I got a big office that I'm an idiot. Which is just so fucking amazing.
Billy Wilder was definitely thinking of a few studio heads when he had that.
Just a couple.
Line. Just a couple.
Just a couple. I do think, though, to sort of to just take it back to that supermarket scene very quickly, those two scenes, they both seem over their skis. Do you know what I mean? Like, they both they're trying to convince each other of their abilities and of their confidence and that it's going to kind of be okay. But you're watching these two people and you're just like, this is absolutely outside your abilities. Like,
they look like they're about to freak the fuck out. If someone if someone knocked into them going down the aisle, they'd be like, "Who the fuck are you talking to?"
Yeah, if someone like farted, they jump through the fucking roof.
Or when they're dragging the body to the fucking or when they're going to the train station and he's just like, "All right, repeat all the steps." She's just going like, "God damn it, we've been over this already." And it's like, okay, it's a murder, asshole. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to fuck up. This isn't a test where you still get an A if you get 2 questions wrong. Fucking pay attention, you dumb
but the thing
bitch.
Too, I totally agree with you, but then like you got the moment when like the car doesn't start.
Well, that's incredible. So do you know? But I'm assuming at least one of you came across that wasn't in the script.
No, I didn't know.
So what happened was they were shooting. They finished shooting at that location. Wilder like got in his car, and that wasn't in there. Like there was no car. They just put the body down, got in the car, drove away. Wilder got in his car and it stalled, and he went, "Oh my god!" Like that's so good. And that when we're talking about how fun the movie is and how funny it is, the reason it's not a comedy, or the reason people don't think of it as a comedy, is the fact that for all of the doofiness, all of that, there are moments, them not being able to start the car, you feel that tension. The moment when she's behind the door, right? Like she goes to open the door and then she has to hide behind it. There are incredibly well executed scenes of tension made out of very small moments, quite frankly. That, you know, again, the car not starting, it's not like he does a close-up of the keys or anything. It's just, he just has a little thing happen that has you go, oh, this could be it. Like, this could be how it all comes apart.
There's a tension in it. They're in that moment, the camera just kind of sits on them and she's not panicking, but you can sense that like on the inside, she's just like outwardly, she's not panicking, but you get the sense that on the inside she is. It also made me think about one of my favorite moments in Out of Sight, when he gets in his car and it doesn't start. And the cop says, "I think you flooded it." And he says, "You want to hear a funny story?"
It's, there's so many little things though, like, you know, with Jackson, right? The guy that spotted him on the back of the train, right? Yeah. There's a little
that guy's
thing,
great, by the way.
He's incredible.
That guy's great.
And it also gives one of my favorite little jokes that Edward G. Robinson has.
What college did he go to? What man is he? He keeps saying
something with a B, right? Isn't it with a B?
Let me see if I can find it.
I want to say it's not. I kept thinking Barton Man. And it's not.
Is it Barton Man?
No, it's,
I don't think it's Barton.
No, it's something though. It's something.
I'll try to find it.
But either way, him keep constantly like saying like, "Well, I'm a this." So when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do. It's like, oh, this guy, he's loving this doofus. He's loving just ringing that. Just let this guy just be a doofus the whole time. I love it.
Robinson has one of my favorite like very little jokes in there, which is when they go, you know, what was that fella's name on the train? And Robinson goes, his name was Jackson. Probably still is. Good bit. But,
I fucking love that goddamn man. Oh my god, he is the best. He is a fucking king.
So anyway, when I only noticed this when I was watching it again the most recent time, when McMurray is talking to Jackson, right? Mm-hmm. It's not noticeable that much, but McMurray lightens his voice a bit. Mm-hmm. He starts to speak in a bit of a higher register. It's not a huge thing, but it's just he starts going up to here, as though you can kind of feel like he knows he's probably screwed.
He's fucked.
But he's got to try his little gambit here. Like, right, this guy only heard my voice. Maybe, just maybe, I can... He's trying to figure out how much can I fake my voice without it throwing off the other people in the room who know what I sound like. Yep. And it's like, that's not a thing that most of these films would include, right? I like that. I like that for all we're saying about like, well, their plan sucks or this and that. I like that the film goes through the pains of, okay, anytime they run into a new obstacle, you need to feel them trying to overcome that obstacle, right? When when the boss calls Barbara Stanwyck into the room the first time and he's like, well, we think it was suicide. We're not going to pay the claim. You do feel both McMurray and Stanwyck in the moment being like, right, what's the approach here? Like, what do we do here? You feel it in that moment. And there's just so much detail in this for a movie based on a book that we've already discussed is slapdash as shit, right? The movie's detail. I mean, one thing we haven't talked about yet that we have to before we wrap up is the Edith Head costuming, right? The brilliance of using not only her costumes to tell a story, right? And Edith Head is obviously putting a lot of thought into that, but the fact that another, a lesser film, a lesser noir film, and again, we should stress, film noir did not exist at this point. The term didn't exist. We didn't have the term film noir until a bunch of French people in like the 50s were writing articles about this stuff. But the brilliance,
and we doff our caps to those. French
and it's
people.
It's only called film noir because the books that were published over there were called series noir, and they were just like, yeah, okay, it's like Giallo but for crime films. Anyway, it is. It's really what it is. But the brilliance of giving Barbara Stanwyck that shitty wig, right? That the movie is never interested in making her. She's a femme fatale, right? She's a proto femme fatale, and obviously she's in a towel. You're supposed to understand why he's attracted to her, but the film never goes out of its way to like over glamorize her, right? The costume choices,
really doesn't.
No, the costume choices are exactly what makes sense for a woman in that position, right? Sure. They're attractive, and like sometimes she's wearing trousers to show she's in control, and sometimes she's more meek.
Sure.
But they never dress her beyond her means. And the wig from the beginning, Wilder, took Barbara Stanwyck out to find that blonde wig and specifically told her like it needs to look as fake as you are, right? Like the character, like it needs to look fake, like. Sure. He didn't want to hide what a bullshitter she was, right? Like that's. I think that's smart.
It's also smart. It all feels so filled with intent, and it's a very high wire act that this movie's pulling off. From the costumes, from the aesthetics, from the music cues, all of it's there. But I'd be remiss, as I know we're wrapping this up, but I'd be remiss if I didn't. There's a couple lines that need to be said just because they're so fucking good. Stuff like, I wonder if you know what I mean. I wonder if you wonder. Do I laugh now or wait till it gets funny?
The whole exchange about speed limit, right?
Oh
that whole banter they have back and forth.
And then he's like, that tears it. Like, it's just, it's, there is something. I get the general idea. She was a tramp from a long line of tramps.
One of the
what's the line he says about her? She drinks straight from the bottle.
Yes. When he says to him, behind the cigar ashes on your vest, you had a heart as big as a house.
Yeah. And then the last fucking scene of this movie is beautiful.
Yes.
It is touching and lovely. And him saying, Walter being like, you couldn't have imagined that it was me, or something to the effect of like, I was right across the desk from you, or maybe even closer.
Well,
it's just like, he loves them. They love each other.
What's been, I mean, I think Wilder, I have the quote here. Somebody said, it gets said in the commentary on the Criterion. It gets said in a number of places that Wilder did. It was Wilder who said it, that the bond between McMurray and Robinson is the love story of the movie. In his mind, that is the love story. And I think that's what makes it really
I
pop.
love the fact that, so throughout the whole movie, you have the visual cue of Walter's always lighting the match because Keyes doesn't carry around matches with him because apparently they explode in his pocket, which I think is amazing.
I love that little man.
So at the very end, you've got Keyes fucking lighting the match and lighting his cigarette. And it's just, there's the idea, like, as much as like, sure, the gas chamber might have been a nice kind of bookend. I actually think that scene, which is kind of messily blocked in the sense that there's also, so basically at the very end of the film, Keyes says, Walter, you're all washed up and like, it's all over. He says, you won't make it to the elevator. And then he basically crumples. And then Walter says, somebody move the elevator a couple miles away. But like, it's just really good shit. And like, I do feel, to your point, that their relationship is really lovely. It's brotherly, father-son-y. I don't know. There's something very interesting about the way that they feel about each other. That the movie just kind of ends there. It just ends with these two guys crumpled on the floor, smoking a cigarette. Like
a bloody cigarette, no less.
Yes,
I noticed this time. There's blood on the cigarette. Clever move.
It's great.
I just love when Keyes offers him the job, and he's like, "Oh, I only offered you the job because I thought you were smart. You're not smarter. You're just taller."
So,
can I also
one other? Please.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention just very quickly, which is the scene where Walter kills Phyllis. Right? She shoots him once. She can't pull the trigger again to kill him. He says, "Sorry, baby, I'm not buying," and she says, "I'm not asking you to buy. Just hold me close." And then he shoots her. Like, you're not going to do better than that. Like, many have tried, but like, it's just the best. I love it.
So as we wind down, as we always do, Tom, how do you think Double Indemnity did at the Academy Awards that year?
I'm going to say 0. I feel like I remember hearing this was a movie that was not loved at the time.
You think 0 nominations, 0 wins?
Yeah, 0 nominations.
0? That is false, Tom.
Ooh, shit.
Fuck me, I'm just
whoever told you it was not well received was gaslighting you. And the reason I say that, it was nominated for Best Picture alongside Gaslight. As well as
shit out of you.
As well as Since You Went Away, Wilson, and the winner, Going My Way. If anybody's unfamiliar with Going My Way, that is a lighthearted musical comedy where Bing Crosby plays a priest.
Yes, sure. Which one? What one?
Going My Way.
Oh, it did win. Okay. Sorry.
And it's a classic example. Like, this is... I've likened the Going My Way win to when Coda won Best Picture in 2021, right?
Okay.
Well, my reasoning being, like, Going My Way is not as nearly as well remembered as Double Indemnity, nor as well remembered as Gaslight. But what you have to look at is, when you look at those nominees, right? Double Indemnity, certainly a dark, bleak movie, right? Gaslight is a bleak movie. Gaslight might be more twisted than Double Indemnity, even.
Hell yeah.
Like, that fucking... Like, I don't know when the last time was either of y'all watched Gaslight, but that scene at the end where Ingrid Bergman has the knife and she's just basically going, I don't know, maybe I'll stab you. I'm crazy. You're just like, wow.
Can I just say, any movie that's title became a verb?
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
That it wins.
And speaking of things, when you watch movies, like seeing Fred McMurray in this and going, what are you doing here? Watching Gaslight and seeing an 18-year-old Angela Lansbury just throws you for a loop, because you're like, you're not supposed to be young.
You're always
You've always been Jessica Fletcher. You were born Jessica Fletcher. How are you 18? How are you playing a teen sex pot? This doesn't make sense.
It's like when you see Ed Harris in an old George Romero movie and he's got hair, and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. So, you've always been an angry uncle.
So to get into this, Gaslight and Double Indemnity, that Since You Went Away is a drama about World War II. It's a drama about the home front and these women waiting for their husbands to come home. And then Wilson is like a nearly 3-hour biopic of Woodrow Wilson, which is very much an allegory for World War II, right? Like, it's the last hour of Wilson is just them going, President Wilson, that kook says if we don't form a League of Nations, a war like this could happen again, but that could never happen again. Wink. So why Going My Way wins, a lot of people theorize, is that Going My Way is the only one that doesn't touch on war or death. It's a light comedy. Okay. And voters, it's 1944, right? The Oscar voters desperately wanted to award something cheerful. They wanted something that lifted their spirits. They kept saying, God, these other nominees are too dreary, and like, we're just getting at, we're just in like the fatigue of World War II, right? So Going My Way ends up winning, in part because it is just like this pleasant ray of sunshine amidst so much like bombast and misery. And that's why I say, like the Coda thing, like, you talk to people who were like big Coda supporters in 2021, and they were just like, it was nice. It made me feel things. It made me feel happy, right? It was touching. And everything else that year was like very bleak and very rough. And people were like, you could just feel that, like, post-COVID, in the same way that like post-World War II, even though those other titles are going to endure more, there was just a moment of people going, no, for right now, we just need to feel happy. Thank you for making me feel happy. That's the going my way thing, I think.
Which I get. And listen, I think that we've seen it certainly over the last, 15, 20 years where the Academy Awards want to sort of quote unquote be better.
Yeah.
And then other times they're not. Like, I feel like, and this is not to take anything away from Moonlight, but I do feel like Moonlight winning is a little bit of a Jesus Christ, Donald Trump just won the presidency. You know what I mean? Like, we want to be progressive. We want to, again, like, not that they're not, and not that this is nothing against the film Moonlight. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it deserved to win Best Picture. But I do think that sometimes they kind of stick their finger up to the wind and the weather and try to sort of jump into, and it happens in both directions, right? Where you, to your point, things are tough, things are hard. We want a lighthearted movie to be the winner. Like,
yeah, it's a pendulum. You get
Absolutely.
a Moonlight because of the Trump shit, and then there's
book.
like a year or two of like, oh, we gave a movie to the blacks, and then we gave a movie to that Mexican who made a lady fuck a fish. Now it's time for the Green Book. We gotta get one for the Green Book.
Did I ever tell you that the Guillermo? It's a very quick story. I had a friend who worked with Guillermo on a project, and they took a hiatus, or they took a break or some sort. And he said to her, "Yeah, I got to go to Toronto to shoot this fish fucker movie," which I loved.
So, all right. So
that was just remember being at a bar after the Oscars. And my one friend Anthony was like, "Oh, Shape of Water, that's typical Oscar bait movie." And I just scream in the middle of the bar, "A woman fucks a fish god. What the fuck are you talking about?
Woman.
Yeah.
A mute woman fucks a fish god. What are you talking about?" Michael Shannon rips his own finger off.
Classic Oscar bait.
And then throws it at a scared black family as he goes off to execute said mute woman and fish god. Yes, exactly the same movie as The English Patient.
So it was nominated for other awards.
Fucking idiots.
Double Indemnity was nominated for other awards. It was nominated for Best Director for Billy Wilder, but it lost to Going My Way, which was directed by Leo McCarey. Barbara Stanwyck was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Ingrid Bergman for Gaslight, which I gotta say, and I mean no disrespect to Barbara Stanwyck here, they made the right call. I've got to be honest. That is like,
she is good in this movie, but she is one note.
Yeah,
like, she's not. There's not.
And Ingrid Bergman is going all out in Gaslight.
She's going your way. Hey-o.
It was nominated for Best Screenplay, but lost to Going My Way. Nominated for Best Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedic Picture, but lost to Since You Went Away. Nominated for Best Sound Recording, but lost to Wilson. And was nominated for Best Cinematography Black and White, but lost to Laura. Which is
that one I might actually be like, yeah, I think maybe I would have given it to Laura. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Laura's a great fucking movie.
Yeah.
I think we should go back to the black and white and color cinematography award. We'd get a lot more black and white movies, which I think would be kind of dope.
Well, we get a lot more black and white movies, but it would also just be like those movies that these people keep making in like black and white Academy ratio because they think that makes their movie important. So it would almost be like saying here's the popular movie category and here's the important category. Yeah. Here's color and here's black and white. So it's like, hey.
You really want this year for them to just go, and here's a special award for El Conde, or, I don't know, half of Maestro. Just half.
Hey, remember Maestro?
Half of I like Maestro, guys. I'm sorry.
I found
it was
out
fine. I didn't hate it as much as most people, but I was like, this could have been better.
I found out this week that I live with a Maestro defender, and I need to really, I don't know what that's going to be.
The cat defends Maestro?
I listen. Maestro. It's interesting. I saw it. I saw it here at the Egyptian with some friends, and we all left the theater, and we're all like pretty over the moon about it. And then I kind of sat with it, and I was like, I don't know. Do I really love this movie? And then I watched it again with my parents over the holidays on Netflix, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I like this movie, guys.
Listen,
it works for me.
Listen, I like it. I think the direction is great. I think the acting's really good. I think it looks great. I just think the script is biting off way more than it can chew, and it kind of leaves you little unmoored at points where you're just like, okay, well, where are we now? This much time has passed. Are we?
The movie takes a lot. It assumes you know a lot about him,
but it's so then it's also like, okay, well, it's about this couple, but now we're focusing a lot on him. Here's just an 8-minute scene of him conducting. Like, how did we get to this point?
I'll just say this one last thing, Mike, because I know we don't want to turn this into an episode on Maestro, and that's fair.
Well, because the listeners and viewers have literally just heard us talk Maestro on the Oscar special the week before.
So I just want to say this.
Month from
now. Say your piece. Say your piece.
I just have a very quick thing to say, which is, the thing that hit me about this movie, and actually kind of hit me about Oppenheimer as well, and we're seeing a little bit more of, is just sort of impressionistic filmmaking, and we're seeing a lot of people being given a lot of rope to do interesting, bordering on Terrence Malick-esque movies where it just kind of assumes stuff. I think Oppenheimer is telling you a lot more than Maestro is, to be clear. But Maestro is the type of movie that, watching it a second time, I was really kind of floored with the fact that Bradley Cooper was like, yeah, I want to do this kind of esoteric, impressionistic movie about a marriage, but also about stardom. It seems like Bradley was working through some stuff, and I thought it was interesting to watch and fascinating. And having just listened to all the Barbra Streisand stuff on Blank Check, and then kind of hammering home this idea that like Bradley Cooper is the new Barbra Streisand, kind of made me go like, he might be, and I'm here for it.
Which makes it even better that he played John Peters in Licorice Pizza.
Yes, exactly.
My thing, and I will get into this.
His best performance of the 21st century. See, you and me, we're the same. We're from the streets.
My thing with Maestro, right, and my struggle with Maestro is, I think it is a fascinating object, right, and I think that its reputation, should be. I hate to say it, but like its reputation should be. Wow, it's messy, and it's a fascinating, like, scattershot expression from an artist, right?
Yeah.
And that's respectable, and we can all like that. And there are filmmakers, a ton of filmmakers who all have that kind of like, yeah, no, this doesn't totally work, but like he's really going for it, and I love it. And I think what's throwing me sometimes is the conversation with people, like especially when it's in the Best Picture race and things like that, where people are like, no. This is a perfectly fully formed movie. Like this is This is like you can my thing is you can absolutely look at that movie and go, my God, every decision this movie makes is deliberate. There's not one thing that it does by mistake. What we can maybe all agree on is not all of those deliberate decisions work. You know what I mean? And I think that's okay. Sure. It is perfectly okay for us to do that. And it is perfectly okay for us to go, it's very cool that he has this very specific idea of how he wants to do a Leonard Bernstein biopic. I'm not sure it totally works. And what throws me is the people who are going, what are you talking about? Everybody who watches this will absolutely come away fully understanding the importance of Leonard Bernstein. Like, that's what throws me, is like, we don't have to pretend like it.
I don't disagree with that. I do think that, listen, there are going to be people, the David Sims of the world, that know every nook and cranny about Leonard Bernstein, and thus the film is sort of this next level thing for them, which I respect, and I think that's awesome. I don't know a ton about Leonard Bernstein, so I went into it relatively kind of a novice on his work. I don't think I know all that much more about him per se, but I also feel like that doesn't.
All I knew was that he taught Lydia Tarr. That's all I knew.
But like hearing people talk about it, you know what the thing is? The strangest experience I got from hearing people talk about Maestro, who were like, "Oh, I really loved Maestro." It felt akin to like the Upper West Side version of people talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. Which is, I came out of this thing going, the storytelling here is kind of incoherent. And in both cases, the fans were going, but if you read the lore, right? So if you read this 500-page book, this one scene where you see him sneeze for a second, that's actually connected to a whole lot of... Yeah, but I haven't read the 500-page book. What are you talking? I don't care that a YouTuber is in this for 5 minutes. What are you talking about?
It's funny because I'm reading that big oral history that came out about the making of David Lynch's Dune, and that's basically what everyone was talking about in like the release portion of the book where they're just like, yeah, like we made a 4-hour movie and then we had to cut it down to 2 hours and 17. So we kind of figured, shit, if you haven't read the book, you're not going to know what the fuck is happening in this movie now. there was a cut where you did know what was going on. We cut all of that out. So unless you've read the book, you're fucked. So,
it's so interesting how Lynch, like, how sad that movie makes Lynch.
Anyway,
yeah, but you know, good for him for rebounding with you know, Blue Velvet and all of that crazy shit. That it's.
Well,
we're gonna have to talk about Dune Tune at some point when it comes out.
We've talked Maestro somehow. We've talked Dune. We've talked all kinds of different things, which honestly tends to be the case anytime we are on each other's shows at all.
It's true.
No matter which episode it is, there is a diatribe about something. Something in the media today. So can't be surprised. We are excited to find out. Tom, you said we need to talk about Dune 2. I'm sure we'll talk about Dune 2 whatever Phil is on in season 5.
That'd be great.
Won't matter
or
what
if we get invited on for some next 42nd Street Drek on his
Listen,
show.
Guys.
I'm kidding. I love talking about bullshit movies.
Yeah, it's
I
nice.
appreciate that.
No,
listen, all of this shit isn't fucking National Film Registry movies.
No.
This is a lot of bullshit. Look at this shit. Look at this.
Oh.
What is this? Why do I own this?
$10,000 blood money.
Why do I own this? This isn't in the registry. This is nonsense. I watch
this
nonsense.
Isn't in the registry?
I watch bullshit.
Tom, I was about to do a bit where I was like, I can match that. Let me grab the nearest disc for me. Which I'm like, oh, wait, I'm sure it's something stupid. And then I realized the nearest disc for me is, in fact, a National Film Registry film that we're doing next season.
I'm trying to think what...
It's a documentary.
The closest to me, I think, is... Oh, God. It's Alita Battle Angel, guys. That's the...
Boo!
So,
Boo!
Anyway, Phil...
I like trash, and I don't even like that.
Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
God,
we really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Please plug away whatever you have to plug. Plug whatever you want.
Listen, podcast like it's 1992. I do with Emily St. James. It's a podcast where we talk about the films and TV and movies of 1992. Past episodes, we've had S.D. Heim on for Aladdin. We've had Karina Longworth on for Basic Instinct. Upcoming episodes, we have Griffin Newman coming on for Leap of Faith, everyone's favorite Steve Martin movie.
That's a good movie.
We have Emma Stefanski coming on for Toys, a movie that feels like a Mike Natale movie.
Believe it or not, never seen it.
Oh, dude!
Please don't watch that movie. I don't need him getting another
that
bit.
movie, Mike.
I don't need another bit. I don't need another bit.
It's gonna become your personality.
He already looks like right now he's directing a movie starring Robin Williams.
We've got Toys coming up. We have Sean Fennessy coming on for Night on Earth. We have lots of great people coming on.
Just had us on for Sleepwalkers, obviously.
We had
the peak of the show.
Wait a minute. Am I finding out Night on Earth? Am I finding out that there was an opportunity to talk Roberto Benigni? And I did not demand that. That breaks my heart in half.
I'm sorry.
You're failing in your old age. You're sundowning, bitch.
Our podcast, Like a Simple Features, is our Patreon where I compare and contrast 2 movies, TV episodes, or songs with various guests.
It's always good. There's never a contentious double feature on that Patreon.
There's never a contentious double feature. But no, I mean, we have lots of great episodes coming up. Jessica Ellis coming on for Before Sunset and Past Lives. We did a Tarantino TV episode with the 2 episodes of television that Tarantino directed, an ER episode and a CSI episode. And yeah, lots of fun stuff. So people can check that out at www.patreon.com/podcastlikeits.
Cool. Is that anything you want to plug? Any socials, any shows, anything? Or are you just like...
People can follow me on all the socials at PMS Iscove, PMISCOVE. They can also follow our podcast at Podcast Like It's on all the various socials as well, including TikTok.
Hey, well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, of course.
Everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
So I was trying to think with this one. I mean, there's obviously a ton of great crime films, noir films, those kind of things that aren't in. There's a number of great Billy Wilder films that aren't in. Maybe I could even be my, obnoxious Disney scholar boy and pick one of those old Fred MacMurray Disney movies and toss it in. But I was thinking about something which is a truly a landmark film in its genre, but one that isn't seen that often. Because, I'll use this kind of as a transition. I mentioned Disney. Tom, when we talk about animation, you talk about Disney and kind of your frustration that here in America, we only think of animation as something for children, right?
Correct.
That wasn't always the case. So after the Disney animators strike, a bunch of former Disney animators formed an animation studio called UPA. And UPA, you've probably seen a lot of films in that style. We're going to be covering them as part of the podcast at some point, but they're the ones like Mr. Magoo kind of looking stuff. Like, you remember that, where like the backgrounds were kind of just like abstract paintings, right? You know what I'm talking about. Those kind of 50s animation. Even Looney Tunes starts aping them in the 60s, right? Where it's a little more abstract line work. One of their films that does kind of the most abstract, kind of like everybody's just geometric shapes and like, tubes waving around. One of their most acclaimed films. It was actually in 1994. It was voted number 41 of the 50 greatest cartoons of all time by fellow animators. Is never screened now because it is an incredibly violent cartoon about a woman on trial for murdering her lover. It's called Rudy Toot Toot. It's based on the song Frankie and Johnny, and it is all about this trial to determine whether or not this woman put like 6 bullet holes in her lover because he was fooling around with some pool hall floozy or something. It's really well done. It's some of the most interesting and creative animation you've ever seen. It's only 8 minutes long. It's terrific. And I specifically, Tom, I mentioned before we started recording that I know you've never seen what my pick was. You really should, because I think you would get a huge kick out of this. But it's such an acclaimed piece of animation. It's from 1951, an acclaimed piece of animation. Fellow animators love it, and real animation fans go for it. It's just never really screened now because we now think cartoons are for kids, and you absolutely cannot show children a cartoon with this much gun in it. There's just so much shooting. But it's really well done, a clever piece of animation, and I think absolutely deserves a place in the registry. So my nomination is Rudy Toot Toot by UPA Studios from 1951.
All right, I'm into that. All right, so mine actually was an Audible that I thought up during the episode while we were talking. This movie came into my head, and I don't know why I didn't think of it beforehand, but talking about Double Indemnity, it kind of clicked for me. My pick is kind of a very similar narrative with a hard-nosed woman getting a man to come into a crime with her to fuck over a guy that's fucked her over. Typical noir plot, obviously, but this one is like the flip side to Double Indemnity. This one's actually pretty romantic and not dark and nihilistic. It gets to dark places, people get murdered and all of that. It's definitely an R-rated adult movie, but there is a romance to it. It's There's a melancholy to the romance, though, and I think as a light flip side to Double Indemnity, I think this would make a good double feature. And I think this filmmaker should have every one of his movies honestly in the registry as one of the most important filmmakers of the last 30 years. My pick is Jackie Brown. It feels very similar, feels very attuned to the Double Indemnity thing. And I just think it's I think Quentin's, other than, Death Proof. I blanked on the Grindhouse second title, but other than Death Proof, I think he's made pretty much nothing but like banger 10 out of 10 masterpieces. So I think it's hard to say like, oh, this is one of his best. It's a great fucking movie. It's definitely one that feels different from his filmography, not just because it's adapted from Elmore Leonard, but because it has that melancholy, adult sadness, romance, all of that into it. He never really gets to that place again until kind of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But I think Jack Brown's great. I think it plays very similar vibes with Double Indemnity. And it's also a great LA movie like Double Indemnity is. The way we were talking about the bowling alley stuff and the intersections and the way the grocery stores looked. Jack Brown's another great LA movie, I love Quentin. I think he's got to be represented as often as possible in this registry. So I think the first mature movie he made should be in the registry. I think this was like a turning point for him. He doesn't get that. He takes a detour with Kill Bill into crazy, exploitation insanity. But then, honestly, the second half of Kill Bill kind of shows some of that Jackie Brown-isms in it. So it's an important movie in his filmography, and I think it's just perfect. So Jackie Brown, put it in now.
Next week,
Patrick Cotnoir joins the show once again for what has become our beloved, dreaded annual tradition, Talking Psycho.
I'm on eBay, and Robert Bloch apparently edited a book of short stories, and it's called Psycho-Paths, but Paths is very small, and it just says edited by Robert Bloch, but the edited is very small, and I'm like, what is this book now? Is this podcast going to cost me $50? Because I'm going to buy his entire bibliography.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time, because we don't watch you, you're watching us.